Hello, welcome to Cities in Review. This will be a 20 to 30 minute video that reviews the city Twisted Dunes that was built on the Oasis map from the Sunset Harbor DLC. First, I'll go over the history of the city, how it developed, and point out any special features. I'll wrap it up by running through some of the stats of the city. I'll also add the Let's Play at the end of the video in case you want to browse through it and check out some of the videos. Also, thanks for watching, and let's get started where it all began with Tile 1. This roundabout here is the original entrance to the city. Where the avenue is now was where the original highway came in. I went ahead and placed our generic industry to the left of the roundabout, where this high-density European and European suburban neighborhood is now. Our first neighborhood was on the right side of the roundabout. And we spent a little extra time building our first high school, the King of Zombies High. As we zoned and reached Tiny Town, we unlocked both Industries DLC and Park Life and placed our first Natural Reserve Park down. We added the water feature by using the fresh water outlet from the Natural Disasters DLC up in the mountain here. And that creates two nice waterfalls that split. One runs down through the neighborhood, and they join again as they flow through the park around the roundabout back to this Oasis spot. The forestry industry was originally where the train station and high-density modern city buildings are now. And on the other side of the generic industry, where we have some of this high-density European and European suburban zoning, was the oil industry. And originally, the farming industry was just beyond where the education center is now. Once those industries were placed in some unique factories, that improved our finances. We started making some decent money and allowed me to expand the city pretty much unhindered by any financial concerns. Once Tile 1 was pretty much filled up, I opened up the tile next to it, Tile 2, and started working on a little town center. Originally, it was all light density, commercial. And then behind it, I continued the European suburban area. I set it up for high density, but at the time we didn't have high density unlocked, so it was all light density. But as I zoned in the area and people started moving in, we hit big town and unlocked high density, residential, commercial, and office. And at that point, I unlocked all of the milestones because I knew ahead of time that this city wasn't going to get very large, and I didn't want to be hindered by having to meet the population requirement to unlock the milestones. So I went ahead and just unlocked them. We built this nice retaining wall for our train station, so we do have train running throughout the whole city. The two major transits in this city are train and bus. There's a little bit of ferry, as well as one metro line. We'll go over that a little bit later. Once I unlocked all the milestones, I opened up a handful of tiles and moved the highway. I connected our existing city to the highway with this dumbbell interchange, blasted the highway apart, built this multi-tiered retaining wall up against the mountain, and moved the highway over closer to the tile edge. Originally, there was a four-way clover interchange right about where our downtown, those tall buildings are now. The highway ran through a lot of the middle of the tiles, and I wanted to move them to the sides to allow more room for the city. And this city, the highway runs around it. You can even see here where the highway kind of pokes through the tile. It originally turned to the right, headed more towards downtown. You can see how much farther it's been moved over to the left. And as I was working on the highway and got it reconnected, I started expanding in what we'll call Tile 3. Art Deco areas, some high density North American style buildings. And at that time, I started setting up the rail network in this city. I did not separate any of the train lines. So the international or intercity line, cargo line, and passenger line are all on the same rail line. There is an intercity line that runs along the highway that was moved with it, and there's some branches that kind of come into the city. I used a lot of the train stations with the bypass built in from the Content Creator Pack. to allow trains to kind of run through stations so cargo trains can zip through passenger stations with no problem. And it was an experiment to see if I could do that without having too many issues with the trains, and our train line is running smooth. It also helped that a lot of the train track for the cargo is one way to the cargo stations, so those trains despawn. It helps keep the lines clean. We built a gated community. I used several assets from our university campus DLC. I used one of the assets to make a community center right at the entrance to the gate. Around about the same time, I added our second water feature, where our forestry industry is right now, and that runs through our industrial tile. This map has, I want to say, 5 water features, because the theme of the city was a paradise built in an oasis in the desert. So I wanted to have a lot of water and thus a lot of vegetation in this nice valley. And as Tile 3 kind of developed and started filling in, and the highway was moved around, I had room to start working on the self-sufficient and high-density European areas. As I was also doing that, I was setting up the industry tiles, so that was probably tiles 5 and 6. Raised the land, started doing some highway work there as we were doing major work with the highway, which allowed me to then move our original generic industry and industries DLCs, those new tiles. So let's go ahead and jump back over there. Like I mentioned before, we have our forestry industry kind of tucked up against the water feature. We got a nice spaghetti interchange that connects our forestry and ore area to the highway. Then we have our farming industry. In this city, there's very little, we'll just say almost no, fertile land, so all the silos and barns are set to fill to import the crops. And then we relocated our oil industry. Started fleshing that out. In this oil industry, there's a mixture of a bunch of different DLC assets, including the ore industry, because we had ore and oil pretty close to each other. And then our ore industry is in a pit where we have these large milling machines mining the ore. Went ahead and started placing some of the processing buildings around the spaghetti interchange. And in these processing areas, I mixed up the assets. I'll go ahead and just briefly show kind of like the zoning. So there's like forestry and ore industry processing buildings mixed in here just to create some unique processing areas. We also have the unique factories in here. And as we were placing the unique factories, starting to ramp them up towards like 150% output, I added the cargo airport to allow the industry's DLC to export the unique factory product, make some more money. At this point, our finances were taking off. The generic industry was moved over to this corner here. I used selective zoning to try and zone in specific factories, and you can see in the front all the crates. Those are like crate buildings. Adding all the industries DLC and expanding the generic industry was a big power drain on the city, so I went ahead and built a nuclear power station. And there's a bunch of different assets in here from many different DLCs to create this unique build. And at this point in the city's life, I was kind of bouncing back and forth between zoning, residents, and building out the industry, trying to keep tabs using unemployment to help me play that balancing game between number of workers and number of jobs. Expanding the industry and industry's DLC allowed me to expand the city population. And as the population was getting larger and larger, we were building out more and more of the city. We had a demand for an airport, so I worked on the airport from the airport's DLC. And this airport was designed to represent the progression of the city. On the one side of the airport are smaller airport stands and the more traditional airport. Then it progresses into the modern airport concourse with some medium planes. And at the end of the modern hub, there's some large plane stands. And where the transit connects is ultra modern, once again symbolizing the expansion of the airport as the city grew. Let's go ahead and take a metro ride down the mountain. And the metro train has a nice ride cross some bridges, through some tunnels, and along the quay. And it runs to our inner city bus metro hub. As the industry was expanding on tiles 5 and 6, I was working on zoning out this self-sufficient neighborhood with this beautiful high school in the front and this high-density European district style neighborhood here with this beautiful view through the archway. And some nice high-density modern city in the back with the train station. While the industry and residential expansion was going on, I took some time and built the university campus from the campus DLC. It built it on this raised platform that's got a nice retaining wall, and it's tucked up in the hill here amongst the ruins. I also added some North American style high density, the brick type buildings to blend in with the campus. We got a baseball field with some parking and a train station to bring folks to the campus. Next to that, there's a supporting neighborhood that provides our students with some off-campus housing. And the third water feature is in this area, which supports some fishing and allows the ferries to run through here. You can almost see the entire city from atop this water feature. The city was growing at this point. I zoned a lot of residents, so we were probably maybe in the 50 or 60,000 range. Unemployment was a little high because I knew the next step was to build downtown. And the first thing I built for downtown was this government center. And then we expanded that out and built some neighborhoods. We also have a little fishing harbor with some fish factories and the shellfish. We have a nice waterfront in front of our tall buildings. And then the zoo is tucked in here to provide a nice green space. The high-density European theme was carried into the downtown area, and that blends well with the old market. There's parking down here, self-sufficient buildings, modern city, some nice unique buildings that bring height to the city. Got our transit in here, multi-platform station from the Content Creator Pack, inner city bus metro hub, all connected in here. Brings folks from all over the world, really, because it connects to the airport into our downtown area. Got a nice fish market with some of the local and organic produce zoning. And then to the side of the downtown, nice North American themed residential neighborhood. And our second natural reserve park connects to this area, goes over the highway up to our fourth water feature behind the tiered retaining walls. It's got a lot of nice little waterfalls in here, a little campground. And this water feature runs down into the airport as well as down into where our gated community is. Provides abundant water to our paradise city that's tucked between the sand dunes. And the water flows into the body of water next to our downtown. There's a nice log cabin resort on the shoreline, as well as a nice beach. On the other side of downtown is this uniform planned neighborhood using a 3x2 level 1 light density residential building. Tiles 8 and 9, I continued the theme of the high-density European mixed up with the European suburbia on the outskirts of the city. And there's a nice education area next to some plazas, parking lots, and high-density modern city with the elevated train station. On the edge of the neighborhood is a rest stop that's in between the highways. On the other side of the 4-lane road is another self-sufficient area. We have a light density around this pyramid unique building, and some high density on the other side of the elevated train track. The high density clusters around the body of water, and the light densities more up in the hills, and that's all across our downtown. And we have our zoo again, which is split by the river, which gives you a beautiful walk across the water. Next to that is a high density self-sufficient with a marina. On the other side of the 4-lane road is our golf course. That was the last video that we made for the city. I used the academic library as the clubhouse / hotel. Driving range. There's a nice chipping and putting area with some detailing in here. I used the forestry maintenance building for the maintenance of our golf course. Got some parking lots. And I think this golf course might have 14 holes. I didn't count them up. A few of them are green. Most of them are sand colored, unfortunately, because we are on a desert map. I just ask that you put your green glasses on and use your imagination and pretend it's green. Our golf course runs up into the hills by our 5th water feature. The golf course offers some beautiful views of the city and was a lot of fun to build. Let's go ahead and just take a look at the city. See if we can get all in one shot. It's a little tough. And let's go ahead and jump into stats. Well, we have plenty of electricity for the city. Our water availability is excellent. I have more than I need because of all the freshwater outlets I'm using for those 5 water features. Fire is okay. I feel like it could be better. But I think where everyone lives and where most of the fires are going to occur is pretty well covered. I do have 20 small houses and 1 large station. Even though it says 55%, nothing burns down. Crime is good. It's rated 6%. Typically my cities are 5 or 6%. So that's right there on the money. Our jail capacity is 420, and we have 240 detained criminals. We don't have a prison in this city, but we don't need one. And just like the fire stations, there's 20 small police stations and 1 headquarters. Let's take a look at health. Average health is 84%. That's about where it normally is for me. Our number of sick citizens is 0, and I always post on Reddit and the Facebook groups. You can't build a city where no one gets sick. And that, of course, helps because ambulances aren't driving around to pick up people and therefore clogging up your roads. Our death care coverage is good. I haven't really had any issues with bodies not getting picked up. I will say I went a little heavier on the crematoriums in this city than in most of my cities. I have about 15 cemeteries and 9 crematoriums, so roughly 2 to 1, we'll say. Typically, I run a 3 to 1 ratio, and I'll empty 1 or 2 that are the highest. Let it, play the game for a little bit. Then I'll notice that they're empty and switch around again. So I usually have 2 cemeteries emptying at any one time. Our child care, our average health is 92. That seems good to me. There's no sick children in the city. Got a decent birth rate, looks like 354. And in the city we have 6 child care and 6 elder care buildings. I typically place one next to the other because they look like they belong together. Elder care, 81%. Looks like our average lifespan is 80 years. I want to say 84 or 85 is the max. Once again, there's 6 of those in the city. Education. Our education numbers are 3% uneducated, 37% educated, 31% well-educated, and 29% highly educated. That's about right for every city I've ever built. The city has Education Boost on and Industry 4.0 on citywide. It looks like our elementary schools are just barely keeping up with the eligibility, which is fine. And there's about 20 elementary schools throughout the city. Our high schools are in the same boat as our elementary school, just barely keeping up with the eligibility. Once again, it's fine. And I think we have 12 high schools in our city. And that's about right. It tends to be
2 elementary schools for every 1 high school. And remember, there's like 3 tiles that aren't really being used for residents, our airport to industry tile. So that's 2 high schools per tile and like 3 elementary schools per tile. And our university, we have 7,900 capacity, 54 eligible. So we have plenty of capacity. But I've been using the campus DLC to build things other than a campus, so that's fine. And I use the university campus from campus DLC. And libraries, there's 5 in the city. Man, they're hardly ever used, and that's always seems to be the case. They're almost never are used. Unemployment is a bit high, looks like 16%, but our city is actually running just fine. I try to keep my unemployment between 5% and 10%. It's a little high in this city at 16%, but the city's running just fine. And if you're gonna erring on the high side is better than erring on the low side. And you can see our birth rate is 354, death rate's 2 something. So our birth rate is higher than our death rate, which is good. Happiness, I rarely ever care or look at this, but 92 residential, 77 commercial, 97 on the office and industry. Land value, we're averaging 49% with some pretty good pockets of high land value, it looks like from the map. But once again, I really don't pay much mind to the land value. You just throw down a handful of services and zone some stuff and people are going to come in. Outside connection, we're importing 2,200 units of stuff. 75% of that's the crops that we need to run our farm, which is fine. And we're exporting 4,900. We'll just round up to 5,000 units. That's typical for my cities. We have the unique factories from our industries DLC producing at 125 to 150%. So we're exporting unique factory products, making some money there. And we're probably exporting some fish as well as some processed material. Our transport numbers aren't that good. I would say we're at 6,000 per week citizen and 2,300 on the tourists. That's roughly 7% and 3%. Typically my cities run between at 85,000, which should be at about 15% on the citizens and 5% on the tourists. But there is a caveat. I have a lot of biking and walking in the city, which will reduce your transport numbers. And usually I just check my overall traffic. If my overall traffic's above 85%, I really don't care what my transport numbers are. If I'm going below that, then maybe I use my transportation system to help improve my traffic. And it looks like the bulk of those numbers are from our buses. And we have a lot of buses in the city, like a ton of routes. I was going to count them, but I am too lazy to do it. It's a lot, but I have the content creator pack, so we can change the buses now. So we have a large variety of the type of buses we can use, from 30 all the way up to 100 capacity. And I wanted to give it a try in the city, and it's working just fine. There's no trolley. I never use trolley. I do love tram. Just didn't use it here. We have the 2 metro routes going to the airport, and we have a couple train routes. One goes to the airport, one goes out to the industry, and the other one kind of goes around the city. And then we have the 2 ferry routes. And I did a couple walking routes in the beginning of the city, but honestly, I always forget about it until I come to like this and I go, oh yeah, that's right, you can do that. And in the beginning, it was being used a lot. Now it's not being used a lot. Maybe they're biking. Who knows what the heck they're doing. And our traffic is oscillating between 89% and 90%, which is pretty good. And I would say typical for a city of this size, 80,000. You should be in the high 80s, I would say, at this point. Garbage. So what do we have for garbage? I used a ton of different stuff for garbage in this city. I have 1 waste disposal unit, which is basically the Japanese creator pack version of the incinerator. 1 waste processing center. That goes with 2 waste transfer facilities. So I didn't use a whole lot of waste transfer facilities, but I think the waste processing centers will also empty out landfills. And I have 4 landfills and 16 recycle centers. And it's running fine. We actually have more processing than what we need. Typically, my cities are running just in the red or in the yellow, where it says garbage processing stats, because I'll just use. But I wanted to use the waste processing center in a nuclear power plant build, so I ended up using it, and then put down a couple of the transfer centers too. And everything seems to be running fine. Only issue I have is the airport from the airport DLC. Just makes way too much trash, I guess. Pollution, it's fine. Typically, 4% is about right for me. And 0% is water. Always 0%, not 1%, not 10%, not 100%. Always 0. Got in an argument on Reddit months ago. Someone said, nah, you can have it be 2%. No, you can't. Well, you can have it be whatever the heck you want it to be. But you'll get 6 citizens if it's 1% or higher. And that's whatever you want to do with that. I want 0 because, like, when we looked at the health, 0 to 6 citizens, that's always a good goal to have. And we got tourists. I don't know. We got 16% exchange students because our campus is all 5 prestigious. Our weekly tourists are 1,600, which is weird because we have an extra 1,000 tourists using our transit, which I guess they're using our city transit to get through our city instead of stopping by and buying stuff. And our attractiveness is 81%. That's not bad. I've never had it like 100%, but I've gotten it like in the high 80s to low 90s. And of course, you get more tourists when it's more attractive. But 81%, meh, whatever. It's fine. But if you're shooting for a high attractive city, I'd shoot for 90%. All right, budget-wise, taxes, I left them at 9. Doesn't matter. Taxes don't mean anything when you have the DLCs. But if you're playing a base game and all you have really is your taxes as your revenue, it's important. Raise them to 12. Budget, I had the roads at 50% when we first started the city. We're not using the snow bumps or road maintenance, so I didn't see any harm in just turning it down to 50%. It didn't seem like it impacted our traffic or anything. My traffic was like 89 or 90%, so I might just do that from now on. Power is 85. That was enough for the city. And everything is either at 100 or 101. Keep in mind the extra 1% on like your garbage, health, all that stuff gives you that extra vehicle for only 1% extra in the budget. Income, that's our campus is making 114,000. We'll say 115,000 a week. We're not making any money through taxation because we have over 250 million in the bank. And I guess this is a good time to get into that. And you'll see it here. So there's 2 mechanisms in City Skylines to reduce the amount of money you make as your bank balance grows. Like I said, we're at like 250 million. I mean, you can look in the income column. This rough math, our tax income is probably like less than 10 grand for 85,000 population city. You're making more than that, probably 5 or 10,000 population city. So the first mechanic is the game reduces your tax income, the more money you have in the bank. And then we'll get into the other mechanism here in just a second. So for a commercial, we're making 91,000 in public transit. That's the airport's DLC. Here we're making over 400,000 a week. That's our industry's DLC, and that's on the warehouses. So that's like our unique factory products. This is why I always emphasize building your industry's DLC such that all raw material that's extracted gets converted to processed material, which then gets converted to unique factory products. Transit is profitable because of the airport's DLC is another moneymaker. Alright, so now let's go ahead and look on the right side where the income and expenses. We can just see where we're at. I don't know how can it'd be interested to compare it to your cities at home and see where you're at. The only thing that stands out to me is the tourists at 90-something thousand a week. That's got to be the airport's DLC, but it also shows up under transit as 107,000 a week. So that's a little weird that we're making that much money. It's got to be the airport's DLC because typically cities make 25,000 a week from tourists, not almost 100. Like I said before, taxes don't matter. We're making money from airport's DLC, from industry's DLC, and campus. And I didn't do the park cheese, so we're not really making any money on the parks. But that could be as high as 200,000. And it looks like our most expensive thing is our industry's DLC, and the second is the campus. So I like to put a lot of campus stuff down. So our income right now is, we'll say 750,000, and 470,000 is our expenses. So that means we should be making about 280,000 a week, but we're not, because the second mechanism in City Skylines is, I call it the City Skylines hidden tax. It doesn't show up anywhere on the balance sheet. So when you start off the game initially and take income minus expenses, it will equal the weekly amount that you see down next to your bank balance. But as your bank balance grows, the disparity between the income minus expenses and what you actually make a week becomes larger and larger. And we'll see it here. I'm supposed to be making 280,000 a week, but I'm actually making about 194,000. So $86,000 of my money is disappearing somewhere. Hopefully going to making City Skylines 2. So for those of you who go, man, you have a lot of money, would you let this thing run all all winter long to get 250 million? No, you can't do that. As your bank balance grows, it becomes more and more difficult to make money. And eventually you'll plateau. You'll start seeing negative numbers, positive numbers, negative numbers, positive numbers, and you've probably noticed that before, just on a smaller scale, that you stay around $8 million for whatever reason, right? And in the city, right around 250 million, we're making who knows what. We'll say anywhere between 50 and 100, 200,000 a week. And we were right around 84,000 citizens, plus or minus like 1,000 or so, as people die and people are born and all that stuff. So our city is running awesome. Plenty of income, do whatever we want. Don't really have that many icons. Let's go over the few that we do have and maybe the reasons why I have them and whether or not I care to have them. So I see over in my fishing industry that we have the not enough buyers and not enough resource icon, or not enough goods. And I expected that to happen. The main driver for why I'm having issues with this is because I have two fishing areas. I have one here in our downtown, and I have one by the oil industry. They're playing ping pong back and forth. Instead of this shellfish sticking to the factories that are right next door, you can see where's he getting this stuff. There's the truck right there underneath the bridge. Where's he live? He lives down here at this harbor. He lives down at this harbor here. Now this guy is sending stuff across town the other guy, so they're cross contaminating, which is why I always recommend when you do your industries DLC or your fishing to kind of keep it all in one location. That way, when they do cross contaminate, they don't go that far. And of course, just getting not enough resource because the trucks are driving all over and it's just running out of material before I can get delivery. And then the other icons I have is some power water icons for some of the Park Life DLC stuff that I put in the golf course that I just never ran power to. I don't really care. And I don't really care about the fishing. It makes a little, fishing makes some money, but whatever. It's more there for looks. And as you see, the other one is the trash for the airport. It always has trash, even with a recycle center down the street. That's just the way it is. It's probably getting its trash picked up from a recycle center 3 tiles over anyway. So that's just, sometimes that's how the game works. But I don't think it affects anything with the airport. So once again, I just don't care. Now this is a pain because I really took a lot of time to get these buildings the way they are. And sometimes they're going abandoned. And it's because of not enough resource. And what's happening here is even though the city has the stuff, my industry DLC has the stuff to supply this building, it's coming from the cargo airport. And the cargo airport's just taking too long to make the delivery, the trucks to come out and drive here. So I probably won't use the cargo airport unless I don't care about the industry in terms of making them historical or not. Well, let's do one more flyby of the city before we say goodbye. This was a fun city to build. I didn't choose this map. It was supposed to be part of a Build the Same Map event on Twitch. It ended up just being me doing it. The other console and vanilla players ended up playing like Planet Coaster or something like that. Kind of left me out to dry. I didn't really like the map in the beginning, but now that I look at the city, I'm glad I built it on the desert. I don't think I would do a desert city again, and there's just too many other maps that I'd like to build on, and I just don't like all the sand. I really like how this city came out. I had envisioned a paradise sitting in between the twisted dunes of the sands, and I think that's what we got. And hopefully I'll see you on the next city. But until then, I wish you the best and brightest in the cities that you build. And as always, happy building.